think I always made the comment that once a miller, always a miller.
Ravel, ambitious, but brilliant! I don't believe it! I swear I do not believe it! Good Evans, he's done it again. Another promotion for the big man.
I've got 12 bottles of champagne in my office and we're going to drink them all night.
Do me a favour, drop me off in Rotherham.
Hello everybody, welcome back to New York Talk. This is the Rotherham United podcast. Thank you all for being with us. And we have a weekend where Rotherham United have not ruined. Be happy, everybody. Yay. It's the best kind of weekend. International weekend has meant we haven't lost. So we'll talk about anything Rotherham United really. So there's two parts to the show. First of all, we're going to talk to Holly Hunter, who is with us. How are you doing, Holly?
Yeah, I'm really well, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's a pleasure. Holly's done a book, Great Escapes, which I'm going to come to in a moment. Second of all, the second half of the show, this is the fans' show. So you are able to join the show if you want. If you want to join us, I will pop a link out in a bit, and you can come and tell us how much you are enjoying this season, or not. And also, your views on chocolate eggs, because that is a theme running through the show that you need to get on board with. Mick is with us as well. How are you doing, Mick?
I'm all good, mate. I'm all good, thank you. I'm down to my last chocolate egg. Chocolate egg.
Yes.
To be fair, I'm also down to my last Terry's chocolate orange egg, so I've got to go out on the hunt for them this week. So I'll be there. I'm out tomorrow.
I had one of Mick's special chocolate eggs that was given as a present, the chocolate-filled chocolate eggs, and I prefer them to the chocolate orange ones.
That's because you're not sane. That's why. It's just not normal, is it?
I prefer them. I don't think I can eat more than two, but I did prefer them. Anyway, Danny's with us. How are you doing, Danny?
I'm doing all right. Unfortunately, I'm out of Terry's chocolate oranges because, I ate them all, unfortunately. But I have found them, so that's good.
Okay, fair enough. You've found them. Noel Jones says Danny's Wi-Fi is fixed at least. Touch the wood you've got there, Noel, because I'm not sure it'll last. Tom's back with us. How are you doing, Tom?
Yeah, good. I don't eat chocolate or the chocolate eggs, so there's no update from me there. Seems like we're all got our own little update on this, so that's mine.
Holly, not to put you on the spot, but have you had one of the Terry's chocolate orange filled cream eggs yet?
I haven't, to be honest. I'm too busy trying to get my hands on one of those new Kit Kats, the sort of double layer ones they've got. But I was going to have an Easter egg before I came on this call, actually, but I saved it for after for a treat, a little buttons one.
Nice. Like it. Like a good early Easter egg. We have people with us in the comments. I'll say hello to Fishman Sid, Martin Holland, YouTube user, Stevie Mick, followers. Says evening, didn't miss the football at all. Milner 66, as is Richard and Sarah Ogden, and loads of people with us. So, like I said, we're going to start first of all with you, Holly. You've written the book, The Greatest of Great Escapes, Rotherham United's Finest Hour. So this is just first of all tell people kind of what the book's about and what kind of inspired you to do this on Rotherham United.
Yeah, so it's about it was the 2015-16 season when we obviously had the Great Escape under Neil Warnock for the last few months of the season, but the book kind of covers the whole season. We obviously started with Steve Evans in charge, we went to Neil Redfern, we had a couple of caretaker managers in between, and then obviously the last few months Neil Warnock came in and sort of saved the day for us and kept us up against all odds. I mean, we'd had the season before when it had gone down to the wire as well with the points deduction. But I mean, it just, I suppose everyone talked all about the promotions, the double promotions, and the even the relegations in between. But that was a season where we stayed up, but it was no less no shortage of any drama. There was plenty of entertaining sort of things that happened along the way, but I just remember everyone, even now I see tweets. It was the anniversary of the Derby game, the 3-3 Derby game, and people are still tweeting about it. They're still posting about it. They're still talking about Neil Warnock. So yeah, it was just something that really wanted to do. Thought obviously even general football fans will be interested in Warnock being quite a good character in football and South Yorkshire in general. So yeah, that was sort of the thought behind it, and hopefully people do want to still read about that season.
Yeah, I've read the book. I've now borrowed my book to Mick. I will get Danny and Tom a book as I promised, but I do highly recommend it. I can't remember if I said to you or on here that when I read it, it made me feel sad because how good that kind of period was, and the period before that as well under Evans. Mick, you went to most of those games with me in that period, in the Warnock period. just talk to me about you've been watching football longer than any of us.
Yeah.
You've been a Rotherham fan for longer than any of us. How does that spell compare to other periods of Rotherham United?
It's remarkable, isn't it? It's absolutely remarkable when you look back at the situation we were in, and some of those games just they were lived so long in the memory. And the Derby game, obviously, we still talk about it now. It was just something else. That sort of, I don't know, 7 or 8 minutes almost. I think it was. Were it 83 minutes? We were 3-0 down. I think something like I can't remember. And I just. It's one of my abiding memories of football. I mean, well, a couple of things. Leif Recklington, he's just my hero. I think he's my favourite ever Rotherham United player, almost after Tony Towner, obviously. And he was pivotal in that sort of end of that season. But that game, I remember when we got 1 goal back. I'll remember it until the day that I die. I remember looking over at the Derby fans. And there were so many Derby fans with their heads in their hands. At 3-1, with 7 minutes to go, and we pulled a consolation goal back, and they got their heads in their hands because they knew what were coming. Because, Lampard were manager, weren't he? I'm sure Lampard were manager.
No, were there.
Whatever.
Yeah, Darren Wassell, I think, was caretaker.
Lampard was still playing, wasn't he?
I have no idea. I don't know. I remember him coming, and I'm sure he came with Derby, and he was anyway. Yeah, but I think they'd got a bit of a reputation for losing leads that season, and we were sort of we weren't adrift at the bottom. We weren't expected to get anything out of it. But even then, they knew what were coming before we did. So yeah, I shall remember that for a long time. But yeah, it was special, really special.
Yeah. I suppose the thing about it, Holly, was that, like, the greatest of great escapes. We were 6 points adrift when he came in. Am I right in saying we dropped a bit further behind? Because the first couple of games they could have planned, did they?
I think was it 9. There was a Reading game. I think Neil Warnock had a couple of games in charge. I remember drawing with Birmingham, and then we had the Reading game and we lost, or maybe we lost a couple, maybe Burnley. And I think we slipped something like 9 points adrift, and it was completely out of our hands, and we couldn't buy a win. So to come back from that was pretty astounding.
It absolutely was. Do you have a favourite game of that? What is 11-game unbeaten run, Holly? It was some of the most famous fixtures: the Wednesday win, the Middlesbrough win, the Derby draw, McDonald's away, which we'll talk about. Do you have a favourite? Is the Derby one sticking out, or is there another one?
It's got to be Derby, hasn't it? I mean, we had a lot of South Yorkshire Derby as well, didn't we? I remember the Middlesbrough was a real smash and grab. We were up against it the whole game, and then Leif Recklington got the winner towards the end. Yeah, Sheffield Wednesday was obviously a good one. It was away from home. But yeah, there was quite a few decent games. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I know it started with Brentford and ended with Wolves. The MK Dons game too, because that felt like we'd all but sealed it by that point, because they were down there with us as well. But yeah, there were some just amazing games. I think we had something like, was it 9 of the top 10 still to play when Warnock came in? So you're looking at them and thinking, where are we going to get points from here?
Yeah, absolutely. The MK Dons is still one of my favourite ever away days.
Yeah.
Excluding Gillingham away, because when we got promoted, to go to MK Dons, who beat us 4-1 on the open day of the season. Well, already put our battering to us. Richie Smallwood scoring a screamer, Kirk Broadford scoring, Carl Robinson crying afterwards. What more do you want in an away day? It's just perfect. It's just everything you want. Mick, do you have a favourite game? I do remember Holly mentioned the Middlesbrough smash and grab there was the smashiest of smashiest grabs I can remember as well. Do you have any others, Mick?
No, I mean, McDonald's were great. I loved McDonald's, and that's where we'd sold our allocation of tickets, and they put us right in the gods, and then they put us all right up in the gods. But then had to concede and sell us some more down in the lower tier. Yeah. I mean, that was and what a result. It's just Yeah, I did enjoy that, but like Holly said, the Derby game's just going to live long in everybody's memory, I think. And that was a draw. It's just the manner of it was just fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. The Leeds one as well. Forgot the Leeds one with the late penalty from Greg Alford. Frank scoring against his boyhood club. Steve Evans as Leeds United as they were at the time as well. You spoke to a lot of players for the book as well, Holly. Just talk to some of the players you talked about, and people can read about in the book, because there's some great players in there you talked to.
Yeah, I mean, Lee Frecklington's one of them. He's been absolutely brilliant. I think we sat down for over the phone for an hour or so and chatted about it. Richard Wood, obviously, I know it was a bit of a rocky season for him, and he came back towards the end and played a big part under Warnock. But yeah, there's been plenty of contributors: Kurt Broadfoot, Lee Camp, Greg Halford, Matt Derbyshire, Richie Smallwood. Trying to think off the top of my head, I don't want to miss anyone out, but there's been plenty of people. It's sort of, I suppose, because a lot of them have retired now, it was tracking them down. And once you found one of them, because there's not necessarily a club to go to, they'd pass you on to somebody else and give you another number. But yeah, some of them, Joe Newell as well, absolutely brilliant. So I mean, some of the characters that we had that season were, and some of the players, we had a really experienced team. We had an older team, I do remember, with the the exception of a couple of younger players, but Farron Rawson as well, because obviously he came back to us after the season before. But everyone was absolutely brilliant that we spoke to. Some really that's what I sort of enjoy in reading books and things, is the anecdotes that you get and stories that players wouldn't necessarily tell at the time, but then they can talk about them. But I know, you've had Kurt Broadfoot on the show, haven't you? You've had a few players, so they probably spoke to you. Told you some of the stories that you probably got the scoop before me. But yeah, it was great to get them involved. And you couldn't really do it without them, because that's, everyone knows about the games. It's, everyone knows what happened, the goals. But to get those sort of behind the scenes stories and what it was like to play for the club at that time and be behind the scenes is really what it's about.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, some great players there. Yeah, Kurt Broadfoot, one of my favourites. Frex, we all love Frex. If you're not a Rotherham fan, if you don't love Frex, it's kind of absolutely rules. I'll come to you first on this one, Mick. Do you have a favourite of that spell? Because prior, when Redfern was in, it didn't really work out for him, sadly. If he stayed on, it might have done, but for the following season, do you have a favourite player of the Warnock era, of all the ones that Holly's mentioned and maybe some that hasn't mentioned? The pairing of Woody and Broadfoot were just mountains and monsters for that period. So they were just brilliant. Woody went on to have a great career for us. Yeah,
it did, absolutely. So it's so typically Neil Warnock, isn't it? Yeah. And typical Neil Warnock players. And you compare that to today, and we're a million miles away, and I have no doubt whatsoever. If we had this conversation with Steve Evans in this room here, he would compare himself, or he would like to try and compare himself as a manager and style to Neil Warnock. And yet they are poles apart, aren't they? But yeah, I mean, Frex, obviously, I can't say enough good things about Lee Frecklington. I just love him as a player. But I watched some of the highlights back today, just to try and remind myself, and the quality within that squad. Again, and I just say this every season. I might be, I'm like a broken record, aren't I? But the quality of that squad was such that we should not have been down there anyway, No. And Neil Warnock brought that quality out of them. So there isn't a particular favourite now other than Frex. They all played their part, and they were all absolutely spectacular in the end. Well, at the end of the season, obviously, maybe not so much at the start.
No. Do you have a favourite stand-up player for that period, Holly? Obviously, some went on to have better careers than others, but do you have a standout?
Yeah, I mean, I did say I don't want to single anything out, but I say Lee Frecklington's. I say he's absolutely brilliant. Obviously, promoting the book and got him a copy as well. But remember, Lee Camp was obviously our player of the season. He was incredible because we'd obviously had Emi Martinez, who went on to win the World Cup. We had him on loan, and I remember we were really struggling for a keeper at the time. And then we obviously got in Lee Camp sort of a few months into the season, and he was, the amount of games he saved our skin. I remember him being absolutely brilliant that season. And he used to have the little fist pump that he used to do to the fans after the turn around to the stand after the game. I remember that. But Kirk Broadfoot was just a hero for us that season as well, wasn't he? He was absolutely brilliant. Everyone, let's say, played the part, but some of those, the players were absolutely brilliant for us towards the end of that season.
Yeah, they were. Kurt Broadfoot's one of those players that, going up against him, I couldn't think of anything worse. But when you speak to him, he's one of the nicest people to speak to. It was so nice. I'm going to finish on a hypothetical, Holly. If Neil Warnock had decided to stay, how far do you think he could have taken that group of players? Bear in mind that spell he had was pretty good.
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? That's and we've I think we've maybe approached him before, haven't we? There's always been rumours when we've been out of managers and he's been out of work. But I mean, we talked about he obviously went on to get Cardiff promoted, and it sort of depends on players we might have had. He obviously took some of our players, I do remember, to Cardiff, Danny Ward and Lee Camp. But I think the following season we obviously had a terrible season and we were relegated really early on. I'd like to think we would at least had a decent, stable, mid-table season, and then sort of build on that. You don't want to get carried away and say we'd been in the Premier League by now if Neil Warnock had still been in charge. We can hope, but obviously in the end it ended up leaving. But even those few months having him in charge was just made for one of probably the most memorable in recent years outside of the promotions and Wembley trips. Just like an incredible few months.
Absolutely. I'm still convinced if this day would have been in a conversation with playoffs. And I am very optimistic as a Rotherham fan. I am aware of that. But Warnock was that good, and the players they had were good players. There weren't much difference in that Cardiff team and us, to be honest with you, I don't think. But again, I'm very optimistic. Mick, do you want to tell me I'm stupid or?
Yeah, you are. You're stupid. I mean, I tell you that. I tell you that quite regularly, anyway. But
yeah, that's fair.
It's I don't know. Neil Livers has just put in the comments there, Holly. Is he hoping for it to come out on audiobook? Is that likely to be a possibility? Do you think?
Yeah, I'll chase on that. I'm not sure, but I'm sure it probably will be at some point. I know it's on Amazon. That's the main place where people buy from these days, isn't it? But yeah, hopefully at some point it'll be, if it's not already, be available for that. You just
need to find the right person to read it. I'm thinking possibly Steve Evans might be a man.
Well, I did have to do a chapter rewrite when I'd initially written it before he came back, and then he came back, and the whole chapter 3 or whichever one it was when he was leaving needed a bit of a redraft.
Yeah, fair. We'll just quickly go through some of the comments people with. But Donald Scott says Bucky had us 1 to 50 to be relegated before Warnock took charge.
Wow,
Krista says he was sat with Lee Camp behind the match the other day and spoke with him. He was laughing his head off about the Derby game. I think that's in reference to. Rob Turner says, don't forget the 2-1 win over Leeds, down to 10 men, last minute penalty from Greg Halford, Steve Evans looking on from the Leeds dugout. Just chaos. What I'll also do is add the link in the comments as well. So if anyone wants to check that link out, you can go and get the book, which we do highly recommend. Thank you very much, Holly, for being with us tonight, for taking some time out. We do really appreciate it. And thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'll leave you now because the rest of the season is not my mastermind subject. If we don't win a great escape, it's not mine.
It's not ours either, but anyway. No.
You're more than welcome to stay, Holly, and talk about this season if you want. It's entirely up to you.
I'll leave you to it, and I'll just watch from the comfort of behind the camera.
Thank you very much, Holly. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do. I said we do highly recommend that.
Yes,
that book.
I'm halfway through it.
So looking forward to reading it.
Yeah. The plan was I'm going to let everybody in some magic behind the curtain. I did say I would get Tom and Danny a book, and I completely forgot.
Okay. It's okay.
There we go. There we are. Right. Remember, this is the fan show. So if you want to have your say on Rotherham United, this is your chance to come and tell us. Is Steve Evans? We're wrong about Steve Evans. Is he the man to take us forward? Is the season not as bad as we make it out to be? Are we right? Is everything a bit of a disaster at the minute? If you don't want to join in, what I'll do is I'll add a link into the comments, so you can put that link into the comments. What you want to do? If you want to send us a message, you can send us a message, and I'll send it privately and give you a little bit of notes on how to join us if you want. We have our first guest lined up, which we'll bring through in a minute. If anyone wants to ask any comments, you can also do in the comments as well. We'll try and get through what we can tonight. There's been no game, so we are where we are. Tom, we didn't play. We are 9 points with the relegation zone. That hasn't changed. But there are 3 points between us and fifth bottom. So we're not. I don't think we're getting dragged into relegation battle. But it's perfectly conceivable for us to finish fifth bottom this season. It's not like it's likely, but it's perfectly possible, bearing in mind Saturday's results.
Yeah, and until we're mathematically safe.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can't really talk about relegation. That would be silly, but yeah, I mean, it is still mathematically possible. But yeah, it's one thing to finish fifth bottom, but it's another thing that the performances are still as bad as they are. At this point, I think we deserve it. I don't think there's anything that the season's really proved other than, that we're as good as our league position says that we are in a league that is, all intents and purposes, pretty poor. One of the poorest I've seen for a while. I mean, I don't know if anyone else watched Wrexham Stockport. It was just sort of on in the background for me. And considering those two sides are third and fourth at time of the game, or somewhere up there, it was a really poor game, really poor standard. So yeah, for me, it's one of the worst League One seasons I've seen for a while, and I think our position really justifies where we deserve to be. And if we do finish the season fifth from bottom, I don't think that would be a surprise, given how the season's gone, and I think it would be justified.
But a disaster and a failure.
Yeah. I mean, anything, relegation would be the ultimate disaster, of course. Yeah. Because if we don't get, we know that we're going to be in this division next season. It's still a disaster, but we can, we've got time to prepare for next season now, I guess. It's the only real sort of thing that you can take away from the next couple games is try and finish strong and bring that momentum into the next season. But whether, I don't think we will. We'll see. It's such a depressing time to be a Rotherham fan, and the football. But it's not like the football itself is interesting to watch, no. And I don't mean that as in our football. I mean the whole League One. Every game that's been played this season, there's not been one team that really stood out other than the obvious Birmingham. So it's I think whatever teams go up this season to the Championship will be struggling, to say the least. The gap between League One to Championship and then in turn Championship to Premier League is getting bigger and bigger each year, and it's not slowing down. So we're going to find ourselves in a really tough position next season, when the expectations are, I'm going to think, so high again. we may well end up exactly where we are this season.
Yeah. Sean H says blame Sean Raggett for the season.
Yeah. We don't sign Crocs, remember? That was said in pre-season. We don't sign Crocs, and 2 are out for the rest of the season already.
Yeah. Former lad says we are missing some important players, remember, even though when they are on the betting, she doesn't play them. Unfortunately, he says time to go. I don't know. Danny, it's been a little while since we haven't watched where's your vibe at with Rotherham United at the minute?
Not a good one, if I'm being honest. I mean, on Tuesday when we played Wickham, it was actually on in the pub that I was in with Gabby. And it's like, we'll sit and watch it, have a beer, sit and watch it. And I actually found myself just chuckling at how bad we were. And you could pinpoint exactly where Wickham were going to score. I think it was their second goal. As soon as they picked up the ball on the edge of the 18-yard box, I said, right, that's second goal for them. Bang, straight away. Third one caught me off guard because it's a bit of we are actually that bad. Right, fair enough. And I was chatting with the guy behind the bar who was a Plymouth fan, who was obviously like a Sheffield Junior or whatever. And he was saying, I can't believe how bad you guys are. You look like you were going to bounce straight back up again, or at least finish in playoffs. He says, what's gone wrong? And I just sort of went, well, tactics and Steve Evans, really. And you just couldn't believe that we lost to Wickham. And he got quite excited, like, hey, there's a penalty. You might pull this back now. You only need one more. It's like, mate, no, it's not going to happen. Not going to happen. My vibe is we've become so predictively bad that you can understand why a lot of people didn't turn up to the Wickham game, because there's no way that attendance were over 7,000. No way on earth. I was showing my girlfriend pictures and she's like, I'm surprised if there's 2,000 there. And I think it got leaked on Twitter that it were about 4,500, including the Wickham fans, something like that. So it just shows how predictably bad they are, that people are just giving it a miss because they're just not bothered anymore. Which is awful to say, because you should be like, you stick with your club through thick and thin, but it's not even like the football's entertaining. We just get rotten end at stick. The football's bad. The results are bad. So why would you spend £30 on a ticket to go and watch it, or £15 plus on food and drink to go and watch it on an evening anyway? Might as well keep warm, watch it at home, or I don't know, watch Coronation Street or something. I don't know. It's more entertaining, that's for sure. But yeah, it's one of those where you hope it changes for next season, but also at the same time, I can't see it changing for next season.
No, I agree.
So we have a huge squad overhaul, which we might do. Nothing's going to change for next season. It'll be another, at best, 12th place finish if we carry on the way that we're doing now. This season might finish 20th. You never know.
Yeah, that's fair. Sean H says, if Mick can't find any terrace chocolate eggs, blame Sean Raggett. He's the new Matt Taylor. Right, we're going to start with our second guest of the evening, I suppose. We have Andrew with us to tell us all about his thoughts on the night. How are you doing, Andrew?
I'm good. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep, Ian, loud and clear.
Good.
Oh, God.
Appreciate you coming on, mate.
No worries. That was my biggest worry, that I'd start talking and nobody hears me. Yeah, embarrassing that. So, yeah, good to come on, gents. I'm not really going to raise the mood much because I'm pretty much on the same boat as you guys. as I guess probably 90% of the fan base are, aren't they, at the moment? But yeah, it's just listening to that, to Holly come on and talk about like the Warnock times, and you kind of look back with so much nostalgia. I remember in the Leeds game, I remember the Derby game, the Middlesbrough game. I didn't go to Willsborough, but listening to the Wednesday game on the radio and going mental in the car when Derbyshire scored. And things like that. And it's just, I can't remember the last time I went crazy. Do you know when we scored? I didn't even stand up for the first goal or the second goal. In fact, on Tuesday night, I started walking down, so I were stood up for the second goal, which was a penalty. But I'm just completely nonplussed about it all at the moment. And I think that's, as with the attendance, that's kind of been what everybody's feeling. It's like it was just something to do on Tuesday night. I didn't go in here excitement or I'm going to match it. We're like, it's Tuesday night, no else to do, is there? So, and that's it. But yeah, I guess my point is, one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about, which is probably no different to anything you guys have been talking about, but forever really like about this squad. So we've got this squad of players, and this squad of players should be nowhere near as bad as they are. Like when you look at that squad and you look at some of them, I mean, you don't know wages they're on, but guarantee Clark Harris, Raggett, Rafferty, James, Dawson, to name but a few, will be on a decent wage. All played at a decent level and in decent teams in recent years in League One. So we shouldn't be as bad as they are. Now, they're not Rotherham United type players for me anyway. Do you know, like Warner used to get this, good human beings, what's all that about? Yeah, but there's something in that. Do you know, you sign good human beings because they will die for that football club. Well, not metaphorically, do you know what I mean? But they'll put a tackle in. They'll do what, like, Volks was a good human being, but an absolute bugger on it. Do you know what I mean? He would be rattling and winding them up. But we've just not got anybody like that. And for me at the moment, I would say, and I was thinking back, and maybe I'm being a little bit dramatic here, but I think Evans' management of this squad this season is the worst that I can remember. Like, if you look at the quality of the players versus some of the worst squads we've had, when we've done worst in terms of results and stuff. The quality of players, we should not be as bad as we are. And it's not even like, all right, we're 14th. We've got 40 on points, probably going to be safe. But even when we've won, it's not been exciting. Do you know, like it's been terrible football. We've scored off Nombe's backside. We've scored off Nombe's knee. We've won games at home, and it has just been an absolute chew all season. And I've got to the point where, I mean, I was never Evans' biggest fan. I thought him coming back might be a good thing. Here's a kick up arse. But it's not worked, and I just think it's abject. It's completely abject all season, and it's frustrating. So frustrating.
When did you begin to turn that? I mean, you mentioned you were all right with him coming back. When this season did it become clear to you that it's not on basically.
I'd say it weren't far into the season, so I were never his biggest fan. I think you go through a thing with Evans when he first came in. It's like, oh, I didn't want him. Then you start doing well, so you can forgive him as a personality, and then that gets a bit boring. So then you start turning again. So I was like, I didn't want him to come back. All right, we might need it. So I was like, okay, might not be too bad. Then we beat Cardiff in the most pre-season friendly ever, normal season fixture I've ever seen. And you start thinking, all right, this might be okay. And then, even first game of season, throwing Nombe under the bus, not playing him, throwing him under the bus. And then he started to just question it. And I had a moment, I think, around the Bolton and Charlton games. I thought he's turning. Maybe I can start forgiving. But I think throughout the whole season, if I look back at text messages to mates on WhatsApp groups and conversations I've had with Favre loves a blade, but he's got a soft spot for Rotherham. And my son, I think I've just constantly been at him all season. So I don't think it took much for my view to change. You know, if you don't particularly like somebody, it doesn't take much for your view to change on somebody. So I'd probably say first 4 or 5 games into the season. And then he's gone a bit like that. And then I think it's at lowest it possibly can be. Like I don't even listen to his interviews because I can't be doing with a constant about turns and lies and stuff like that. I'm probably not good for you guys putting something like this on your podcast and slagging him off if you ever want input into the club. But I can't be doing with him.
It's nice to hear somebody else say this.
Yeah.
The
one moment I remember for me that is just reminded me of who he was the Exeter game when he didn't put Nombe on because he didn't train well, and then he went on to, we lost the game, and he went on to say about the Dylan Phillips Cam Dawson situation, and he said, yeah, no, at least I got that one right though, and that just completely switched in my head. It was just I was younger when Evans took over, so I don't remember listening to him much before or after games, whatever, in interviews. But there's such a mentality switch for me when he said that, because I just thought, well, he's not changed at all. He's not grown up at all. It's all the Evans show. And up until then, I was similar. I was willing to give him a chance, but after watching that post-match interview against Exeter, it just reminded me that everything that we expected, it was going to come back, and it was that's I think I lost faith after the first match. if I'm being honest,
it feels a long way back from where we are.
Theme, isn't it? Throwing players under buses, isn't it?
Yes,
it's fun being in Miller.
It's that absolutely no ownership of issues and mistakes. It's quite obvious we're playing the wrong formation. Now, we don't get paid to manage a football team. We pay, £4,500 to watch them a season. But it's just so abject. Like, my lad, we went to a match on Saturday, and there were a pub, it's Tuesday, and there were a point where Rayner, I saw his hands going like this. So he's like, which seems to me, we're narrow, get narrow. And it's like, why? That's not worked all season. Why do we need to get narrower? What are we trying to achieve? And there's just no ownership of anything. It's always somebody else's fault. It's the players' fault or the fans for wanting more. He's so condescending to us as fans as well, and that winds me up more than anything. We've watched enough football. We're not experts, but we know enough, don't we? You know what I mean? And he's so condescending towards us. Normally, I've seen Warney a couple of times. I'm a bit of a Warn lover, as you'll get called on Twitter, you know what I mean? Happy clappers and all that. But I've seen Warney out a couple of times when he was Rotherham manager. And you'd go up to him because you want to talk to him. If Evans walked past my house, I wouldn't even walk out of the house to say up to him. Well, I might just abuse him and tell him to get away. but it won't be. I won't be stopping for a picture or anything like that and asking him nice things, because I've got no interest in the bloke at all. I don't want to hear him. I don't want to see him. I want him out of this football club.
Yeah. What do you think then? Go on, Mick.
Well, I just got to say the thing that Andrew mentioned earlier on. We're at the stage now where I think for the vast majority of supporters, if not all of them, where we don't look forward to going to games, and it is a chore, and that's a really difficult position to be in. You know, the attendance on Tuesday night showed as much, because a lot of people who are probably, I don't mean this to sound condescending, possibly arguably less keen on the football, less ardent supporters, they're not getting entertained, so they're not going to go.
Yeah.
But when you've got the people who are the kind of hardcore who've gone for years and always will do no matter what, when you've got those people absolutely bored out of their trees and just don't want to, and genuinely are going out of a duty rather than actually wanting to go, it feels a long way back. It does feel a long way back. And I know I'm experienced enough having watched football to know that 3 results later, 3 wins on bounce, and all of a sudden it's no longer a chore. But we've had that. We've already had that this season. 2 or 3 decent performances, some good results, and then we've just gone back. And it's I don't know. It's quite soul destroying as from a football supporter's point of view. I agree with what Andrew said. It's just I don't want to go. I genuinely don't want to go, and that's bad.
Can I just jump in with a quick question for everybody off the back of that? Would you say, well, how would you rate the connection between the playing staff and the coaching staff to the fans? Would you say it's like all-time low since we've gone back to New York Stadium? Because the way I look at it is, even under Taylor and Carlisle and Richardson, we still had that little bit of a connection, like we're in a bad spot, but we're doing the best, and they sort of appreciated our support. But for me, there's such a disconnect between the stands and the pitch now that how do we fix it as well? I suppose that's part 2 of the question. How bad is the disconnection, and how do we fix it?
Yeah, I mean, the only match I can think it was worse was towards the end of Stubbs' reign. Even the unsuccessful managers, like we were talking about Neil Redfern earlier, I always had reasonable goodwill towards Neil Redfern. I always want him to do well. I thought it was a long term. It just didn't work out. I think I can't remember the relationship between the club and the fans being so or as close to toxic as it's ever been. To be honest with you, I know there's been times before my time. Mick, you were talking about the Danny Bagara time, and I know there were protests around the club around Bagara's time. What was that, 95, 96?
Yeah. I mean, the Booth administration ended in a bit of with a bit of a bad taste, really. I think, but I don't know whether this is fair, and maybe Andrew's he might have a comment on this. I'm not 100% convinced. And I put this out there, I'm not 100% convinced how much of a difference in terms of personalities there is between Ken Booth and Tony Stewart. I think Tony Stewart's arguably just a 21st century version. He's a successful businessman who's got where he has through being a hard-nosed businessman and always being right. And I my sort of recollection of the Booth era was Ken Booth being a very similar personality to that, and that didn't end well, and it worries me. You know, are we sort of 40, 30, whatever it is, years down the line, but almost in a similar situation? I don't know.
I'd agree with you there, Mick, to some extent. You know, I always remember kind of everybody always used to say about Booth. You know, when we got up under Ronnie and we managed to stay up a few times, it were like the playing staff on the pitch had far exceeded where the club was actually set up to go, and it had not gone with it, and it's done the same thing. I think Warney did a great job at protecting everybody, including us, from the what's really going on. Now, I think we've got to thank Stuart. He did save the club, but there comes to a certain point where his legacy is in massive danger of being ruined by this. He seems to have just got apathy to the whole thing at the moment, and even the fact that Evans is still in almost adds weight to that, because we are so bad. And most managers in any other club would have been sacked by now. But I think maybe there's this blind faith to Evans. But it's just, I feel like Stuart is running a massive risk of ruining his whole legacy. And it would have been a great legacy. He's a guy who took us away from Millmore and bought this amazing stadium. And we've had some fantastic times and been spoiled, I guess, as Rotherham fans, to come to this point where it is just, we seem like on the precipice of disaster. And that might be dramatic again, but it just feels like if something don't happen, I think we could. I'm not saying we'll do a Scunthorpe, you know what I mean? But we could go again. There's nothing, like you guys have already said. There's nothing that I can see from this season that gives me hope for next. Because I just don't see it, and I think that's got to come from top down. It's a culture that comes from top down, and it's just, I don't know what's happening. Sorry, I'm talking. I just realised how much I'm talking with my hands. I can see it on the screen.
Ken Boothie was. Well, I remember Boothie well for Ronnie years. What I would say about Boothie is that I never felt like we were never sold the Premier League dream under him. I know the ownership group at that time never said, "Oh, we're going to the moon." Whereas people mentioned that Boothie was much tighter than Stuart, which is fine. But we're getting promised things now that are completely unrealistic. Whereas that was never real. We always knew. I always felt like we knew his place as Rotherham fans when Ronnie was here, and that obviously as such with Boothie here, we always knew where we were, didn't we? And I think everybody was all kind of on the same page where the club is. At the minute, it feels like Tony Stewart thinks we should be challenging for top of that championship, when everything about this club screams 14th in League One, which is where we are.
He wants to get an Aston Martin by Ford Focus money, do you know? And that's what he's trying to do, and it's just not working. But then I guess, you know, like playing devil's advocate, you've got that Kieran Maguire report that came out the other day, and whilst we're losing money, we're generally a sustainable football club. And he even said Rotherham are really in the championship, we're an example how a championship club should be run financially. So he's obviously running it from a business point of view. As a businessman, you cannot question the man. Probably one of the most successful Rotherham's ever had. But as a football owner, he's not surrounding himself with football people. You could be a businessman, but you need to surround yourself with football people. And if you look at all the successful football clubs, they do that. They invest money, but they surround themselves with the right people. Man City, what do they call? Bournemouth, Forest, you know, things like that. They surround themselves with the right people, and we don't.
I don't think we've ever. I certainly haven't been an advocate for this Tony Stewart out in any way, shape, or form. I think the club is run well, from a business point of view. The issue has been, it was run really, really well. You mentioned the word culture earlier on. Warney, when he was manager, had created a culture throughout the club that really fostered just exciting football, but also a future for the club. And I think since he left, and this is not about his managerial tactical managerial expertise, but since he left, that culture is it's drained away. There's been nobody there to pick it up and run with it. And with the greatest respect to the chairman, I don't think that's his game. That is not his game. He's not the type of person to start trying to create a culture in his business. He's there to make the money, but he needs the people below him to have picked that up and run with it, and nobody has done. And it's sunk certainly further than I thought it was going to sink as a result. So whatever happens in the next 12 months, 24 months, I think is going to be pivotal now to the future of this football club, because like Kieran Maguire says, it's a sustainably run as a football club. But the key word in that is football. And if the football's dire, then there ain't going to be a club, because nobody's going to turn up and watch it. And that's where this is going to fall down at the moment.
Well, you cheered us up, Andrew.
To be fair, I tend to. My lad watches it on a Sunday night and a Thursday night, but I tend to listen the next day when I'm driving around and stuff like that. And the amount of times I actually speak, I sort of respond to stuff that you're talking about, or nod and agree or disagree or whatever. I thought it only made sense for me to come on. I'm an opinionated bugger, so I'm always going to want to have me say. You'll just have to see me on Twitter. I don't kind of mince my words. I say it is at times, but I felt like it'd be good to come on because I think I have a similar view to you guys in terms of where the club's at. I'm not going to come and offer a. There are a few people who kind of still love Evans and maybe it's like a delusion. I don't know. You can't criticise somebody's opinion. It's their opinion. They're allowed to have it. But sometimes you're like, it's just what world are you living in to think that everything's going to turn? Because there's just nothing. Like even, sorry, I'm going on a bit, but even like when you think about the summer and you think about attracting players, so you guarantee if you approach a player, one of that squad. The player will know one of that squad. That's what football's like. Everybody knows each other. First, what's he like to work for? Blah blah blah. And you know what he's like to work for. You can just tell. So if Rotherham are a choice of 3 or 4 clubs, unless you're really desperate, you're going to choose another club. You're not going to come and want to work for Rotherham United and Steve Evans because you don't want to get showered at constantly and belittled and abused and thrown under a bus. So yeah, sorry, finish it off on another positive note.
Let's finish on a positive. Do you have a view on chocolate eggs? Do you have a chocolate orange? Do you have a view on these kind of things?
I must admit, I did seek one out actually, based on Mick's advice, and I can't remember where I got it from. They're selling them in most supermarkets. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. I'm a massive fan of Terry's chocolate orange anyway. And when I had one, I was impressed. It's probably up there in terms of the smaller egg varieties. It's definitely one of the top 2 or 3.
Yeah, game changer, mate. Told you.
Massively. Totally agree.
I can't believe I'm surprised we're still talking about chocolate eggs all these months on.
I know it's
football, isn't it?
The only happiness you get.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Andrew, for coming on. I really appreciate this, mate. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks ever so much.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers, Andrew. Cheers, mate.
Thank you.
If anybody does want to come on, we're probably going to do another 20 minutes or so. So if anybody does want to come have a chat about Steve Evans, Tony Stewart, chocolate eggs, whatever you want it to be about, we are available.
Can I just chuck in a conspiracy theory from what Andrew left us with there? I said about players ringing up and saying, "Well, what's Steve Evans like to work for?"
Yeah.
Not Terry's chocolate eggs, but Terry, if you're watching, drop us a line about sponsoring us because we're keeping your business alive, mate. Apparently. But yeah, just to get tinfoil hat out slightly, I wonder if that's what Rathbone did when, in the summer, because they had 3 games with Steve Evans anyway, and I wonder if he called around a few people and say, "Is this what it's actually like to work for? Like, what are your thoughts on it?" Because he sort of waffled something about he left us to avoid relegation. Someone waffled something like that, but it's like, then why would he go to?
Oh,
he might have gone.
Yeah.
I thought it was me then.
Yeah, no, it's me. It's me. Huh? But yeah, there were no guarantee of Wrexham being where they are now. No guarantee coming up from League Two. So that was a risk in of itself. But he still left. So I thought that being with Rotherham and what Steve Evans was talking about, we were going to be the higher up the table and the more safe choice to stay on with us, but he decided to leave. So I wonder if that's something he did. He rang round and went, "Is this what it's actually like?" And then man got made up quickly and he shuffled off. And he's actually doing really well for himself now. He's found his feet at Wrexham. So fair play to him. That seems to be the theme of playing lefters. They seem to be doing a lot better at the next one up.
Yeah, they do. Evans said that Rathbone left because he thought we were going to get relegated again, which is, well, it's not far off the truth. Let's go through some of the comments from earlier. Josh Smith's awful season, awful decision by the club in the past 3 years, awful tactics. About as interested in this season to chairman has been the last 2 years. Time for him to sell up and Evans to go. Michael Miller says, not sure the expectation will be the same next season at the start of this. Club has massive ground to make up any kind of challenge. There doesn't appear to be a solid foundation to build on. Richard has been waiting 52 years. Last 3 years is worst he's seen. No leadership on or off the pitch. Stevie says, never thought I'd be indifferent to Rotherham win or not cheer a goal, but here we are, totally disconnected at the minute. Ab says, the road should be strong enough to go against Sunderland for the good of the club, or they need replacing.
I think they tried to do that when they got Richardson in, but because he
Worked briefly.
basically didn't perform miracles, it just went, well, we're going to get Evans back in now. It's my decision, my football club, which is a bit not how you run things. It's not even how you run a business, to be fair.
No. It's not great. Matt Wilson couldn't believe as soon as Evans was announced as boss, anybody would think it was a good choice. It was obvious that it was a decision made by a chairman reminiscing about better times.
Yeah.
Tom, we were. Mike's commented a bit earlier about where we are next season, about expectations for next season, are interesting for me because if Evans is here, the expectations are going to be high because he will talk them up. That's what Steve Evans does. Steve Evans is not going to come out in June and go, I think we'll probably be 12th this season. He's going to talk them up. Whereas if a new manager came in, the expectations would be reset. And I think it would be good for a new manager to come in because it would be a blank start. There wouldn't be the expectation of second. It would be a new manager with minimal expectations. So it would give somebody a chance to have a season, and then finishing 10th wouldn't be so bad, or whatever the case may be. But I just feel like wherever Evans is here, because of who he is as a person and how he talks, expectations are always going to be high for him.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I think expectations will be high again. And I don't think it will be from fans; it will be from the manager himself. Because what more of a sort of motivation to be fired up than this season? You know, Evans talks about, or he did at the start of the season, about the last 2 seasons haven't been great. You know, the fans were disconnected. I'm not going to try and, paraphrasing here, but he essentially just blamed the last 2 seasons for everything. And now he can blame this season as well, because it's, there's no reason he can't look in the mirror and say that it's not been his fault, because if he doesn't, then he is, objectively, he's not taking accountability for what's happened or responsibility, and I'm sure he won't. I'm sure he'll have reasons, Sean Raggett's of the excuse pile to bring out. But yeah, I see what Mike means when he says that expectations will be lower next season, but I don't think, definitely internally they won't. Whether or not Evans wants to sort of admit that this season, admit the reality of the position that we're in and how good the squad is yet to be seen. But he will use this season as a sort of motivation to get playoffs next season. And it won't help. It won't help a bit. You're completely right in that if a new manager comes in now with a blank slate, almost a blank squad as well, if in a year all the players are leaving, it gives them a year to sort out the foundations, and you can have a mediocre season, finish mid-table, and then you can kick on after that once the foundations are set in place. And that's what I think Richardson would have done. I think he would have set the foundations in place, and this is why I like talking about sort of the what ifs, because if Rob Scott had stayed as director of football, I know he's still at the club, but if he had stayed in that role, if Richardson would have been able to just focus on the squad and getting tactics and philosophy right, and sort of building up the foundation, which Richardson said in many interviews that this is a 5, 6, 7 year process, and that's how long he expected to stay. Well, relatively, that's how long he expected the work to do. And I think you could have looked at it as in 5 seasons, we would have been in a lot stronger position, similar to when Warren left. You've got younger players, higher lower wage bill, higher squad value, all this. Hopefully that would have been the way that it was going. But with Evans's appointment, it was such a short-term view of I don't even think it's reminiscing. I think it was just a case of he was his mate. He would have said yes to everything. He would have made Tony Stewart feel a lot better about himself. And I think that's what's ended up happening is Evans hasn't replicated this short-term success that he once did, and is paying the price because, as we've mentioned previously, and it's a fact, Evans works transfer window to transfer window, so there's no real structure in place, there's no real youth in place, training pitches, match day experience is all going to stay the same until he leaves, and we've got to front up that that's what's going to happen. And then you get into conversation about, well, if he does leave, then who comes in? And honestly, I think at this point, the only people who come in is a young foreign manager who doesn't really understand what it'd be like to work under Tony Stewart, because I think most managers are clued in the space and sort of understand and have contacts and networks and sort of understand, it's not the greatest place to probably work, and you're very limited in how you operate. Stubbs' interview is obviously not a fantastic manager, but Stubbs' interview is again doing the rounds, so it's no secret about how you're treated as a manager. You've just got to ask Liam Richardson, who got sold a dream and then left after got asked to leave after 4 months for no real reason. So yeah, it's tough times, because definitely the way to go is to hire someone else, but it's not going to happen, is it?
No. Power says if Evans stays, I'm staying home. Chelsea says expectation are rock bottom if Evans stays. I know what you're saying, but if Evans are still here next season, and let's say we're 14th, 10 games in, fans are going to be on his back straight away. There's no live or leeway with that for me. Whereas again, if somebody brand new comes in with new ideas and we're 14th, they get given more leeway. I think they get well. He's clear up the mess from other guy, whereas this mess is Evans's, and he's got to clear up his own mess. So there's expectations for Evans to get it right, because he says he'll get it right.
I think it's how you approach the matches as well. Like we've seen this season, how he approaches and the football we actually play. And I think that's one of the biggest letdowns, is that if we were 14th but we played entertaining football, and like I said before, we just got rotten end at stick, you can not forgive it, but you can sort of understand it. And I think that's what you'd get with a new manager, because if we finish 14th, 15th, the new manager comes in, football's a lot better, but it's taking the time to effectively get the team working cohesively. But we're still 14th or 15th and the football's better, you can understand it a bit, that the wheels are in motion. But this season, it just feels like we've just stopped. That's what it feels like. We've stopped. That's how we're going to play, and no one's bothered if it works, it doesn't. So we've just sort of accepted it, really. And I think when you get that, just that bog standard acceptance of poor football, you do need to change it just to reinvent it. And like I've said, Matt, I don't know who we bring in after Steve Evans. I don't know who would want to work under Tony Stewart, but I think I'm too fussed at who we bring in, as long as they bring in new ideas. I'm not too bothered if it's Steve Bracknell from Royal Oak FC. It's still bringing fresh ideas and push us on a little bit. So, yeah, like I say, it's just stagnated. It's stagnated, and that's the worst thing you can do in football, because as soon as you stagnate, you actually start going backwards because everybody else is still going forwards.
Yeah. Scott says, I don't think fans will ever be off his back now. The only way this turns around for Evans is if he stays, and in the first 10 games, we are third, second, first, whatever the case. That's the only way it turns around. Even if we're 8th, I still don't think that's a turnaround. I still don't see Evans recovering his position with fans. I just feel like it's gone so far. It's a long way back, and it needs almost perfection to get it back to where he wants it to be. Do you want anything to add on that, mate?
Pressure Evans will be under at the start of next season will be massive. Massive doesn't even do it justice. Because he doesn't have to fix the mistakes he's made this season. He has to bring fans back, so he has to play entertaining football. So he has to change his appeal to 4,000 people, so they actually come back and start buying tickets and keep buying tickets and keep coming to matches. He will be under a huge amount of pressure. But if you change managers, that might convince some people to renew a season to go, we'll see how they do. We might go back, we might start going again. Like I said, we've just stagnated, and that's the dangerous thing. But the pressure will be under. He won't have any hair left. The little hair he's got, he won't have any left at all. At all.
Still that blonde, though.
It'll try to, yeah. It might do a Peter Wright, just have a blonde mohawk. That might bring some people back, to be fair.
It would be fair. You know, I still stand by the T-shirt cannon. When we win, gives it 3 pumps, then T-shirt cannon. I still maintain that to bring people back through. Anyway, do you have anything to add on all that, Mick? Not necessarily the T-shirt cannon thing.
I think T-shirt cannon's a really good idea. I could fire it in some certain direction. I certainly wouldn't miss. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's simple. What he's got to do is play with some tactics. Play your football with some tactics. Have an idea. Have a plan. You know, use all the pitch as opposed to just part of it. It's not that difficult. It's just not rocket science. You know, so Steve Evans and Paul Rayner are their own worst enemies as far as the situation they find themselves in at the moment. It is purely and simply of their creating, because they can do better. They have done better. They've done better elsewhere. They've done better with us. So why we've got this obsession with playing the way that they play now, which is not how they played when they were here before. No. So I don't know how that's where this has come from. And they are literally living out the definition of insanity, aren't they? You're doing the same thing week after week after week after week and expecting something different to happen. It's bizarre. So whether he's given time next season by the fans is irrelevant. He's been given time already, and he's not changed one iota. Not one thing has been changed by him and Rayner in the way that we play football. Nothing. And they can blame personnel until the cows come home. But it's nothing to do with the personnel. Nothing. It's to do purely and simply with the way that they're asking them to play. And Steve Evans and Paul Rayner both know better. They know better. They've been around long enough. They're long enough in the tooth to know better. I don't understand why they are behaving the way that they are and the way that they're performing the way they are. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. So I don't know. He shouldn't be given any more time next season. There's a comment in the earlier on from Josh about if we stack Steve Evans, who we're going to get in. Nobody wants the job. Nobody wants this gig. So we're in a difficult, really, really difficult position and difficult situation at the moment. And it's that's the one. Yeah, it's of the making of Tony Stewart and Steve Evans, and arguably they're the ones that should be getting us out of it.
Yeah. Craig Miller says, do we feel we've missed the trick not having a different style of play, missed wingers, balls into the box from outside, etc. This time it doesn't work.
Any style of play. We haven't got any style of play, and that's the problem.
We've got a formation. I mean, it's not, but that's a style, isn't it? I suppose there's another question.
Yeah, exactly.
Richard says, what is acceptable next season? It depends who's manager, doesn't it? Because in your second season as manager, you have to then be doing better. And for me, you have to be challenging for promotion if Steve Evans is still here, because he's had a year. He's had his chance to put the building blocks in place. So if he's in his second year, you have to be challenging, and that's not necessarily playoffs anymore, because the league's not going to be as strong next year. You look at Birmingham going up, probably Wrexham, maybe Charlton in the playoffs or something like that. That's 3 really good teams coming down. You've got Plymouth coming down who are going to be similar. Maybe not as bad as us, but you're not going to be. There's no guarantee that they're going to go straight back up. There's no Wrexham and Stockport coming up from League 2, so it's a weaker league. So for me, if Evans is here, you have to be challenging for the automatic places. At worst, in the playoffs. Without that, anything below that is, well, I consider it a failure this year. But anything lower than that is failure. If a new manager comes in, then you've got to give him time. I suppose it depends where we are, Tom. What's your view on next season?
It's tough, because sure you'd accept. Playoffs would obviously be fantastic, but if we play the way that we're playing, would it be enjoyable? I don't know. I honestly, for me, next season, I'd just back to the basics of a plan. I'd love to see that there's a plan in place. I'd love to see that there's players bought for a system rather than players bought because they're going to be good, or old pros or whatever it is that seem to be the recruitment in the summer. There's no current excitement about watching any players. There's not one player that you sort of associate, sort of want to do well. There's not one player that you can get behind who works hard, is a Rotherham player in their DNA. So it's really tough to sort of set any expectations for next season. I think that's probably best is to not set your expectations, anywhere, because you're only going to get disappointed, I think, as a Millers fan. But for me, it'd just be that if we finish next season just outside the playoffs, but the style of football was exciting and entertaining, and the players looked like they wanted to be there, and you can get the noise back in the stadium, then I think for me that's more of a success than playing poorly, not really identifying with the players, but finishing third and getting to the playoffs. I know that the second point is kind of counterintuitive, because you've got to be at least half good to get there, but with the standard of this league, I'm not entirely sure you have to be anymore. Your Wrexhams and your Stockports and the teams, and Wickham, the teams that are up there, again, like we said, some of the worst teams in League One. This is the worst League One I've ever seen. So I don't think you need to be all that good to get up there. So I'd honestly rather get that feel good, sort of fan to team relationship better established, and just sort of enjoy going to the games again and enjoy watching the games, whether that means that we finish in first, second, third, or 14th, 15th, 16th. It doesn't matter to me. To me, it's the sort of, I want the football to be enjoyable again, and because we've had 3 years of just pure agony and just boredom. So that would be my personal expectation. Well, expectation for success, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair. Interesting. I've got to guess the season tickets. Sean Tuesday, 3K decided not to go. We're really interested to see. First of all, see what they do with prices. Other clubs have frozen. Other clubs have significantly increased their prices. The club suggested last year that they were going to increase the prices, but because of how bad last season was, they didn't feel like they could justify it. What are they going to try and do this year? Bearing in mind that fans have already told them that they're not going to turn up. So if they do increase it, or even more, then they're not going to turn up for next season. The club have got a big decision to make in the next. If they haven't made it already, got a big decision to make. Bearing in mind it's centenary year as well. Do you know we're getting ready in one of the worst places we've been in a long time? How we feel towards the club in the coming up to the 100th year, and that'd be really sad.
Before the club performed.
You are
just saying, it's kind of like how football was in the town before Rotherham United were formed. Football were absolutely dire. I think it was Rotherham County that finished either bottom or second bottom. Rotherham Town weren't doing the best in the Midland League, and we merged the two together and were somehow successful in re-election. So it's kind of fitting that we've had a poor season in the run-up to the 100th year, when the season before the club formed, it were an awful year in football as well. Fun enough, in the same division as well, but there were only 3 back then.
Yeah. 2 comments here. Centenary year, which fans haven't been involved in. Scott Kent says still not heard anything about 100 years either. I'm expecting that the club have got some things up their sleeve. I don't know. You normally see a build-up to the centenary, don't you, is what I would say. You normally see a build-up a couple of months, 6 months beforehand. This is what we're going to do. These are the things we've got lined up. It's everything from the club is definitely quiet at the minute, I suppose, isn't it?
And it's only about 2 months until we actually get to the formation date, because it's
end of May?
Like the 26th of May, I think it is, like, which is like the official formation date. So we're just over 2 months away. Nothing. The only thing we've really seen is and it's not even part of the centenary, is bringing Millermen back, which I'm all for, which is brilliant. But other than that, the silence is actually quite scary. It's like, what are we going to do? I've heard whispers of a special centenary kit, but I don't know.
That's minimum, though, isn't it? That's the absolute minimum. Is a fancy kit.
Exactly. Yeah. So other than that, we've heard basically nothing. and it's 2 months away, which is quite scary.
Yeah. Well, this is negative, isn't it? It could be worse. You know, it could.
Yeah, it could be a Wednesday fan for a start, so it could be a lot worse.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Is there any other topics we want to go on?
I'm quite happy that I feel like I've not particularly contributed a great deal this evening, and you're still as negative as anything. So I've done my job well, or I'm actually right, and things are as bad as I keep making out. Who knows? You need to manage your expectations for next season. We need to lower, as fans, we need to lower our expectations.
Even if Evans is here?
Especially if Evans is here. You need to lower them even further.
But what bar are you judging him by, though? Expectation is different to what you have, is how far you're judging the manager, though, isn't
it? What, sorry?
Your expectations for the season and how you're judging the manager can be different, though, can't they?
Yeah, to a degree, yeah. But the point is that, we'll be sold a dream, as we're always sold, sell the tickets. Ignore it. You've seen what you got this season. If nothing changes in the closed season, you need to set your expectations a lot lower. Revert back to being a early 2000s and 1990s Rotherham United supporter and expect hope for mid-table. And if you get anything else, it's a bonus. It's fantastic and it feels a lot better. But the bar needs to be set very low, because this season has given us what it's given us. And there is no room, as far as this management team, appears to be no room for movement in the way that they intend to play their football. Sorry, let me rephrase that. The way that they intend to approach football matches, because they don't actually play football, do they? Just manage your expectations is all I would say. And I don't mean that from a patronising point of view, but
this summer's going to be very good on this podcast.
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting because things may change. Things need to change. Something needs to change. And if it does, we've got stuff to talk about. If it doesn't, we've still got stuff to talk about, because we know that it should be changing and in what way it should be. And I think that, is there a little bit of a subplot here with this lack of any sort of discussion from the club or anything coming out of the club about the centenary year and everything else? It's unusual, It is unusual. They should be celebrating it. We should all be celebrating, and I'm sure we all will to a degree or another. But the club should be really driving that, and there's been nothing at all, which tends to suggest to me perhaps maybe there's some discontent behind the scenes. There's not discontent. That's perhaps not the right word. Something happening that that we don't all know about. Do they just think, well, it's not worth it given the situation we're in, or I don't know. But I would have expected a hell of a lot more than we've had.
Do you know when the original centenary was? Whenever it was, 1984, whenever it was. Again, I'm asking a question I think I know the answer to. Do you remember anything from that? Any build up to it, or was it less of a thing back then?
You picked that question straight out of my head, Matt. I was legit just that. Sorry, mate. Come on.
There were bits of it, but it was nothing like things are today. People celebrate opening a packet of crisps, don't they? You know what I mean? It's just celebrate everything and anything. So it wasn't that significant a deal back then, as far as I can recall. There was some stuff about it, but the club again didn't have any sort of PR machine. You know what I mean? We had next to nothing, so it wasn't the same in those days.
Fair enough. Is there anything else we want to talk about?
No, I think we're
I don't think so.
It's all good fun.
It's all good fun, yeah, something like that. Apologies for everybody for being so negative tonight, but it's where we are. If we were anything other than negative, we wouldn't be being honest with you. So Yeah, Scott Kent, I want a gold badge minimum on the kit. Minimum. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, where we are. Let's regroup in a few days' time. We're back on Thursday to preview Crawley, who have had a new manager bounce. I watched some of their game on Saturday, and they were quite entertaining to watch. Imagine being a rubbish team and still being able to be entertaining. That's it's a thing apparently. But anyway, we'll talk about that. We have a busy week as a podcast lined up. More to be revealed over the next few days. It isn't a Steve Evans interview this time. I promise you that one. But we do have. We're going to start working our summer series, I suppose. But we've got something lined up this week, which we'll tell you all about in a few days' time, assuming everything goes well, which it should do. Make sure you've subscribed on YouTube if you haven't done so already, because everything is on there. You can see some instant reactions, some previous interviews with some previous managers and some previous players, which are available for you on there. You want to watch some instant reactions or previous shows, like if you want to go back to the start of the season, see if you can find any positivity around there, let us know. Ollie Lewis says 18, get Tony Stewart on the podcast. Can you imagine? It'd be an absolute car crash. There's no point asking because it will never happen. It'd be a waste of time. But it would be good, Lewis, if I suppose there's an open invitation for that. I don't think. I think. Well, Paul Davis asked for an interview, didn't he? Paul Davis asked, if they're not giving Paul Davis an interview, they're certainly not giving us Divis an interview. So
I think if we managed to get a Tony Stewart interview, they'd have to have Bounce separating us from him. That's the only way to agree to it. There has to be a line of bouncers in between the two.
We'd be fine. We're nice.
Yeah, exactly. There'd be a camera on Tony Stewart and a camera on us, and then a line of that you see off camera in between the two of us, just in case something kicks off and it is a car crash.
We'd be the ones that are fine. I'm sure of that. But yeah, boss, we've got a few things lined up. Nothing Tony Stewart level. We've got a few things lined up for the next. What will probably be our summer stuff. But yeah, check out on YouTube. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're on iTunes, Spotify, follow, subscribe, whichever your service provider allows you to do so. We'll try and get a scout report done for Crawley because I am interested in what's happening over there. We're not going to get one done every week for the rest of the games because we're playing some really boring teams and our season's very, very boring, so I don't think we'll gain anything from it. But personally, I'm very interested in what's happening at Crawley with their new manager, with their old manager, being a new manager and whatnot. So I will try and get something sorted for that one if we have time. Because like I said, we have got a few bits on this week which we'll sort out. Last call. Anything else?
Mike's just asked a really pertinent question. I think. Has Ronnie been on the podcast? No, we have asked him a few times and he has agreed. However, when we've asked him, either he or us have been slightly the worse aware, or both sometimes. So, usually both. So we'll be speaking to him in the next couple of weeks, I think, at Ado. So I hope to get Ronnie on, but that wouldn't be just one podcast. That might be a whole series.
About 7.
Yeah. He's always said that he will, and we've never actually managed to tie that down, but we will. Definitely will.
That's obsessed.
Sources for Stoke makes Ronnie Moore. Boof, summer series sorted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've got loads of players we'd love to get on. We'd love Frexham. We'd love Alan Leon. We'd love. God, who else is there? Loads. Oh, by the way, Kev asked me to talk about this, and I'm really sorry I didn't, Kev, until just now. Kev has announced the summer Legends Night. Well, two things. Obviously, the Richard Wood one is in a few weeks' time. If you haven't got your tickets for that, do get your tickets for that, because that'll be good. The players that are there is going to be really cool. Also, the Legends Night for Friday, the 27th of June, the 4 up top that he has announced. That's Nigel Jemson, Adam Lathondra, Matt Derbyshire, and Will Hoskins. There are a lot of goals in that show.
The calculation how many goals there are.
Yeah, exactly. A lot. So all those players. We've already spoke to Alfie, who was one of our favourite guests we've had on. He was a lovely man and a Rotherham legend. So at minimum, I know for a fact he'll be great. And I'm sure Will Hoskins, Nigel Jemson. We did try to get Nigel Jemson on once, but that didn't pan out, sadly, for one reason or another. But yeah, we'll maybe try again in the future. Anything else?
No, I'm not saying no. No.
Right. Anyway, thank you all for watching. We're very honoured that so many people have decided to tune in to us whinge and moan and be really, really miserable. So thank you very much for giving us your Sunday evening or whenever you are listening, as some people do listen later on. Appreciate it very much. We will also be back Thursday. And Mick, Danny, Tom, thank you very much. We will see you next time. And as always, up the Millers.
Up the Millers.
Up the Millers.
I think I always made the comment that once a Miller, always a Miller.
Ravel, ambitious, but brilliant! I don't believe it! I swear I do not believe it! Good heavens, he's done it again! Another promotion for the big man.
I've got 12 bottles of champagne in my office and we're going to drink them all night.
Do me a favor, drop me off in